with the scent of potpourri, films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly podcast that reviews one or two new release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. You can find more of our work, including my written reviews, full episode show notes, and the complete backlog of our episodes at obsessiveviewer.com. You can also write into the show by emailing me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com or reaching out to me on any of the social medias. And if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can get access to content at any of our tier levels on a recurring monthly subscription basis, or you can buy individual collections a la carte in the Patreon shop section, which I need to go and update with new stuff there. But this week on the Patreon, I posted a lengthy and oversharey, like ridiculous episode where I revisit Office Space, the 1999 Mike Judge movie that I deem to be a perfect satire comedy. And I posted that on the $5 and $10 level tiers. It was a good kind of cathartic thing because I was viewing it as from the perspective of myself now as a near 38-year-old, and then comparing it to the last time I talked about it publicly on the podcast in episode 171, where we talked about it on the show when I was just a fresh-faced 29-year-old podcaster. And yeah, so there's some good stuff there. I also began my coverage of the new Stephen King book, You Like It Darker, with part 1 of that covering the first 3 stories in the collection. I posted that last night on Patreon, and I will be posting more throughout, hopefully this week and into next week. So once again, you can sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for all that and a bunch more content. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find me on social media, including Letterboxd at Obsessive Viewer. And later in the show, we'll be reviewing the new Richard Linklater film Hitman, which hits Netflix today as of the release of this episode on June 6th. But before that, we're going to go over some movie news and then review George Miller's Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, in a non-spoiler and spoiler feature review. And joining me this evening is the man who has all the guzzling, which he uses to drive his film writing and podcasting at awakeinthedark.com. Welcome back to the show, returning guest, my friend and IFJ colleague, Brent Leuthold. Brent, how is it going, sir?
It's going great. That's what that makes me want to do.
Good
little
to
revving
hear.
Noises.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode, Brent. These are some, I think we're going to have some interesting conversations around these movies. I'm going to issue a mea culpa in the Furiosa review, later because, I revisited Fury Road and my opinion of it has changed, which I'll save that for when we get to the review. But I'm looking forward to chatting with you about these two movies, Brent. And yeah, what is new with you? I have a list of your recent reviews here. You've got reviews of Monkey Man, Civil War, Abigail, Challengers, The Fall Guy, I Saw the TV Glow, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, and In a Violent Nature. Yeah, how have you been both in terms of film criticism and just in life, man?
Yeah, I've been doing well. Yeah, I feel like I might have a couple of spicy takes for you.
Ooh,
evening.
nice. Okay.
I feel like, and I didn't plan it this way, but well, anyway, we'll get to those.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's going well. You know, the two of us, we're having white boy summer.
White boy summer. I spent an hour by the pool today, so yeah, and in the pool.
Mean,
yeah.
I'm going to the pool tomorrow, so I mean,
there we go.
Lord Hanks deems it so.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yeah, no, it's been good. I'm sure this will come up in your news stuff, but it's set to be a pretty interesting movie, like summer box office.
Yeah,
just sort of weird stuff, which I'm sure you'll get into. But but yeah, so I'm it's always fun because I feel like, I don't know, there's always so much like, I don't know, it's always, but there's like, whenever there's like news about just whatever, like, let's say the death of like movie theaters, or like the sentiment that like people don't go to movies anymore and all this stuff, like, you know, like people like you and me and like, you know, FJA colleagues and stuff, it's like we watch, like, it's like kind of no matter what happens, like there's still a steady current of like we're keeping up with stuff.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like that's, again, it's like that's not, of course, that statistically that is not nearly as common anymore. So I just think it's funny that it's like we've been here, you know, or we out here kind of thing. It's just like, you know, because like that's what I'm trying to get at is like the summer box office is going to be what it's going to be, and you know the things will happen or whatever. But like we'll still have stuff that we're going to figure out to watch and see, and like we're going to make the most of it. You know,
absolutely,
regardless.
You know,
I just think that's kind of a funny difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I've seen a lot of the commentary about like the death of movie theaters and everything, and while yes, some movie theaters are maybe cracking down on some maybe slightly not quite ethical usage of their ticket reserving system.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So while they may be cracking down on that, or may not be cracking down on that, like
you mean a loophole that I may or may not have actually actively discussed on this podcast?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. No. If I did, it would be what I just said. Yeah. My friend Lent Leuthold. I like him already.
Yeah. But no, the whole AMC A-list thing, which I don't know. It's funny. It scares me a little bit. Like, for context, I don't, do you mind if I share?
I do not care at all.
So, Adam Aaron, or whatever his name is, if you're listening,
email me directly, personally.
If he's listening, please, earmuffs. But basically, and I've talked about this loophole too, that where if you have A-list and you use Fandango to reserve your tickets, you get Fandango points, which is something that you introduced to me. You corrupted me and did that. So once you accumulate points with Fandango, you get either $5 off a movie ticket or $5 credit for Vudu, now Fandango at Home, which I've used to buy several $5 movies on Fandango at Home.
Hell
previously Vudu. Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. And the kind of thing is that the week on A-list switches over after Thursday. So if you don't use all your 3 tickets for the week, you can just reserve something and you still get the points in Fandango. And Brent, do you want to share what AMC emailed my friend?
I have it up right here. Leuthold. I will read it word for word. No.
Okay.
No, they're basically just like, you're not, like, you're making AMC A-list reservations, but you're not showing up, and the tickets aren't getting scanned, and you can't do that. Mm-hmm. This is not a new, like, this is in the terms and conditions that no one reads, including myself.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if this is something like new. I checked the A-list subreddit, and this is something that they clamp down on. Like, they remove posts that refer to it, so it's kind of tough.
Oh, interesting.
But like, I think there maybe has been an uptick of them sending those emails out. Mm-hmm. So who knows? I don't, it whatever. But like, if you're going to give people 3 reservations, why does it matter how they use them? If they show up, like, they don't care. I mean, it's actually, I'm just using this podcast to dig myself in deeper and deeper.
Oh, no, go right ahead.
Fandango is the one that should be mad.
Yeah.
It's not AMC. They're not losing anything by people making reservations. Mm-hmm. In fact, it pads their stats.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious if that's a really good point, because like my kind of my assumption was that when you reserve a ticket and it doesn't get scanned, I just assumed that like they're still eating the cost of that ticket, however it's distributed in terms of like as an exhibitor versus the studio and how the price is done.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's not scanned, if they're tracking it as not being scanned, like why not just write that off as something that's not, you know, that's not an authentic ticket? Because like
it doesn't seem like anything that AMC, like they kind of hold the cards there, don't they? Like why wouldn't they be able to just, you know, anyway. So but I mean, Fandango is the one that's what makes this work,
right?
And like they're the ones I should be getting an email from, like, stop screwing around. And anyway, so
I mean, it's kind of a perfect system there. It is it is actually really, really good. And also like with A-List, like I love A-List. I love AMC because of A-List, and I also love MoviePass for crashing and burning and giving birth to this new era of subscription-based movie theater viewings. But it's something that like, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I love A-List, but also like the reason that MoviePass failed, which I should have watched that documentary, but I haven't yet, but
it's pretty good. If you're interested in the subject, it's absolutely worth watching. Because I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that they skip over and editorialize, but like, yeah, like it's worth it if you lived it, which you did.
Nice. I made a spreadsheet of all of the movies that I saw through MoviePass when I had a year subscription, and like I calculated everything. So yeah, I'm definitely the target audience for that. But but the thing with A-List is it's backed by a massive, you know, like corporation. It's like it's not like an upstart or a startup like MoviePass that's doing this radical business model. Like they have obviously the ground to do this, but like if it's a problem, if it is such a problem that they are auditing people's use of it to the point where people that are using tickets but are like reserving tickets but not getting them scanned, that they're like reaching out to like kind of slap them on the wrist a little bit or the back of the hand, and giving like a tisk to them. Like if it's why, and I don't want to put this out in the universe, but like why, like if it's enough of a problem to reach out to your consumer base to tell them not to do this thing, like why give everyone 3 tickets anyway? Why have it be that if it's going to be a problem when people use 3 tickets but not use 3 tickets? I don't know.
Well, their ideal is that people use no tickets.
Exactly.
Their ideal is that people subscribe for $20 a month and forget they have it. That's the basis of literally every subscription service, whether it's a tangible good or not.
Yeah.
Right? That's how stuff works.
Oh, absolutely. Whether it's a tangible good, whether it's a streaming service, whether it's a Patreon thing. By the way, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer.
I mean, it's just, you know, so it's like, you know, the thing is, like, they could do all the other things. And again, speaking of not wanting to wish things into being, but like, they could have raised the prices. They could have changed terms. As far as I know, like, and I watching that MoviePass doc, which I haven't seen it, but like, you know, I was struck by, like, of course, the thing that blew out their whole thing was they did $10 a month. Yeah. Like, that's what screwed their whole thing.
Insane.
You know, which is way too low. And they were originally, I think, going to do about $40 or $50, which is more reasonable, but they knew they wouldn't be able to get that many subscriptions, nearly as many as they got. So, you know, they kind of priced themselves in a place where they just couldn't win. So, but like A-List has been $20 the entire time. Yeah. I've had it since early 2017. They have not changed the price. They haven't changed any of the terms that I know of. And I mean, in terms of the 3 tickets, I'm sure the aforementioned terms and conditions that I've read, they probably have changed many times. But you know, like it is fundamentally the same, which I'm like shocked. Name me any, like almost any other subscription service since 2017 that has had, you know, the same price and feature. It's just not a thing that happens. So absolutely, you know, I was livid when I got the email, but I'm like, I step back and I'm just like, you know, it's still it's still pretty, like, I don't want to have to switch to Regal, even though theirs is pretty similar. I don't like their app.
Oh yeah.
I don't think either of these companies, like, I know they're public companies, but like, I don't know if like, is it working? I mean, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, subscription services overall, I mean, for that sort of thing, for like theater use, it's like either you get the money up front and then people are going to either go in and out of the theater, or you just get no money.
Yeah.
So it's like, I would imagine it's a better alternative for them.
Oh yeah. And like, and I swear to God, this is not an ad for AMC, even though we've talked extensively about how to not even screw AMC out of anything, but like to game the system. But like 2 points. One is that when I use an A-list ticket, if I have the means, meaning when I'm not completely broke or overdrawn my account, if I have the funds, I will get a large concession, like drink. So me not paying the price for each individual ticket, I'm still spending $7 on a large drink and then peeing ridiculously after the movie. That's not something I should say online. But
in the popcorn bucket.
In the popcorn bucket, yeah. But like having that, like I will do that. So they are making a they're getting some money out of me, because like my assumption is that like the ticket price, like it's conventionally known that like the theaters don't make squat off of the actual tickets. So I think that there's like a added benefit to their business model for people like me. It's like I'm not going to the theater to see Furiosa because I've been waiting years for this movie and I'm willing to shell out the $20 to see it in IMAX, and because of that I'm not going to be able to afford concessions that the theater itself gets more profit from than a movie ticket. Instead, I'm just using an A-list reservation and buying the drink and then accumulating points so I can get $5 off eventually.
And that's the legal way, the AMC way.
Exactly.
That's a different thing.
Yes.
That's the funny thing about it is when I see movies by myself, I pretty rarely get concessions.
Oh, interesting.
But if I'm seeing movies with my wife or like my wife and friends, or like her parents or whatever, I'm almost always getting some kind of concessions.
Interesting.
So it's sort of funny that it's like either like I'm going by myself and not I'm getting the A-list reservation and like zilch, and that's it, or it's like I'm not paying for my ticket technically, but then like the other people or whatever, because I want to get the stubs points for it, and then concessions on. So it's like sort of like when it rains it pours with that. So anyway, I mean, everyone does stuff differently with movie stuff, but anyway, it's I mean, it's I mean, I would imagine it's still smart of them to do it, and I think if it wasn't, they would have changed stuff. I mean, it's been for me, it's been 7 years, and I know that it's priced differently in different states, and there's exclusions, and I know that, but like the one down 10 minutes away from me, it works, and it's $20 a month. So anyway, that's
And the other point, and then we can move on in the episode, I promise. But like the other point is like, I think it started. Did it start in 2016 or 2017? Because I know you said you've been a member since 2017.
Yeah. So our it was Rave and then maybe Cinemark. I don't know. I think there was one other one, but it changed to an AMC, I think like late 2016, or it might have been early 2017. And then, A-list started right around then. So for some reason, I remember the first movie that I saw at that AMC that's near us here was the Beauty and the Beast remake.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if I was on A-list quite at that point, but I think it was definitely in 2017 that I was on it. So.
Okay. I'm trying to go through my because I got it when it came out, like it started. Did I? It started 2018 A-list. I believe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep.
I'm wrong then. But it was the AMC I remember we had in town in 2017, and I think even before A-List, I think there was like, it was called Stubbs Premiere or something.
Oh, okay.
And it was like it was like waived convenience fees. It's like a few of the features of A-List.
Yeah.
And it was like $20 a year or something. I'm kind of making stuff off the top of my head, but there was something. I think it was Stubbs Premiere, and then there was just Stubbs that was free.
Yeah.
And Stubbs Premiere is like, you get like, I think that's why they did the free upsize thing.
Yeah, I think
where you can do any upsize for free, and like I think the convenience fee was waived.
Yeah,
like
I think
if you went through like Fandango or something.
Still the way that it works now, because I think they have the Stubbs, which is just signing up on the app or whatever, and then Stubbs Premiere, and then the premium thing, the royalty of AMC is the A-List. But
top of the mountain, baby.
Yep. But what's fascinating about that is that, yes, it hasn't changed, and thank God it hasn't changed, because, like, to put that into context, if it started in 2017 or 2018, it, like, there was, the whole pandemic, like the movie theaters were closed for,
if there was ever an era, that's a stretch of time when they would just say, okay, we tried this, it's done.
Yep. And that is the biggest shock to me, is that they haven't altered it, they haven't adjusted, they haven't dropped it entirely. Because I remember when the theaters were shutting down, I was like, okay, like I remember like Mike was telling me, when we were in like chatting and everything, he'd be like, we might be seeing the death of movie theaters. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that's possible. And then so like I kind of carried that with me, and I was like, at the very least, we're seeing the death of subscription-based movie theater experiences. But
yeah, they tried.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing, is it's ironic, because I think they did pause it for people, but I never canceled, because I'm like,
oh yeah,
it's gonna, but honestly, they probably got some extra revenue out of people.
Yeah.
Who, like, before they pause, you know what I mean? Like, because I'm sure there were savvy people who were like, well, it's April of 2020, like, we're canceling this. I'm not going to movie theaters at least for the next several months. So anyway, who knows? So I mean, maybe they were able to keep that going, actually, because
that's a good point.
If you think about it, it's people
free money.
are still paying the subscription, and they're not getting anything for it. So I don't know. I've kept it. I've been through it thick and thin, COVID and not COVID. So don't send me emails that where you're auditing myself. That's all I ask, man.
Yeah,
like, come on.
You come at the king.
Come on, Adam.
You come at the king.
Adam Aaron, Brent, who is name checked in the Movie Pass doc.
Oh, is he? Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
Who is not a fan of Movie Pass. You'll see there's a whole section about AMC.
I'm going to have to watch that. Yeah, that might be the secondary review next week, now that I think about it. But yeah, anyway, the other final, I swear to God, final thing about AMC is that they were also positioning themselves pretty well, like, just by happenstance, I believe, by introducing the on-demand side of it, like right before the pandemic hit and everything. And now that's folded into Vudu/Fandango at home. Right. But like, that was like at the outset, it was like, oh, we have movies at home now, like on demand through AMC. So that
they did do pretty well with that. I remember I rented a few things through AMC on demand, which, as you mentioned, is rolled into a couple other things now. Yep. But yeah.
So in other words, Brent, you fucking saved movie theaters. Thank you for your service, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you for me for my service.
Yeah, of course, of course. Thank you for thanking me for thanking you for your service. Okay, enough AMC whatever.
Service thanking.
Service thanking. We are going to be reviewing Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, but I do have a couple of really quick news items to kind of get through, because I did hint at news items early in the recording, and I don't want to be a liar, as my voice cracks ridiculously hard in the recording. But a few things for the news segment here is that actually, I talked about this last week, I believe, so I'm gonna cut that out. There is A news item about a new streaming service that lets viewers create their own shows using AI. This was on the Hollywood Reporter. Fable, the studio behind the viral AI-generated South Park clips, has announced a streaming platform that allows users to create their own content. And it's funny, I bring that up specifically because I literally just talked about this as a potential future thing in episode 429 of the podcast when I was talking about the OpenAI feud thing with Scarlett Johansson. Brent, have you heard about this, and how do you feel about this piece of news about the dystopian future that we are rapidly approaching?
I, for one, welcome our robots overlords or whatever. That Simpsons line. Yeah, I mean, boy, I had actually not heard that specific piece about people creating their. So, just generally, is it the idea that people would type in prompts?
I think so.
They would generate content, visual and audio content together, like based on those prompts.
This. It's interesting. Full disclosure, I didn't read the full article or anything, but I did just read this line here that is utterly terrifying and proves my commentary.
You might not want to read the whole thing, honestly.
Oh, yeah. Like, for context, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about this and said that, it does sound, the idea of having an AI-generated show or an AI-generated thing where it sucks, it's dystopian, it's terrible, but like the idea of someone, like a viewer being able to input like some kind of thing to have an AI model generate something out of their creativity is somewhat appealing on a surface level. And also I talked about how like, season 6 of The Wire could be something that could be generated and everything. Which,
oh my God.
Yeah, which is terrible, but also it's like, I want to see what's going on in Baltimore. But the quote that I read was, "The vision is to be the Netflix of AI," says Chief Executive Edward Sachi. "Maybe you finish all of the episodes of a show you're watching and you click a button to make another episode. You can say what it should be about, or you can let the AI make it itself." I don't like that.
I don't like that last part, especially.
Yeah.
Let the AI make it itself. I mean, whatever. Like, that's the thing with this stuff. It's like, it's so obvious to me that this is like studio heads hate, like movie studio heads, like hate movies. Like They hate entertainment. Like they're all bean counters. They just went, so like, given that, if that's the premise that at least I'm pitching, and maybe some will accept, maybe some won't.
Right.
Like, this is like, that's just is going to warm their cold little hearts. I mean, it's perfect. It's like, you don't have to like pay any of the thousands and, whatever, tens of thousands of people that, it takes to, make actual, art, movies and TV shows and all this stuff. You just click of a button. So,
they're all about the bottom line, not the creative process. And this is the perfect way to cut out humans from the process.
Yeah. So, I mean, from that sense, yeah, it's horrifying. I mean, the idea that, we would have a tiered system in terms of high art and low art. Not in terms of whether something is sophisticated or highbrow, but literally whether humans are creating it or not.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's just like it's just not a world. It's not something I want to have to contend with.
Yeah.
I have a lot of other stuff going on.
It's
just like, this sucks.
Yeah. And it's also, yeah.
I just don't know. That's the thing is like, so, in terms of like, I don't know, the idea that like, if someone, this is where the line is fuzzy to me, where it's like, if someone wanted to make it for themselves, I think it's different when you're talking about like someone typing in a prompt, like, oh, I think this would be a funny thing. Yeah. And I type it in and it makes this for me.
Right.
Like, this might be moral midgetry, to steal a phrase from The Wire. But like, I don't know. I don't see that as really quite as harmful. It's more the idea that it's like, well, why not just take it a step further and let everyone watch? It's like, okay, now you're talking about distribution. Like, that's a different thing, and you're making this thing that could be fun for individuals really sucky for society.
Oh, absolutely. And
so, who knows?
You know what's funny? And there's also that added line to it, that added kind of boundary that shouldn't be crossed, in that this is like viewing this as something from like our perspective, people who like, we spend a considerable amount of time watching media, engaging with media, and criticizing and like discussing media. That is something we both do, and our friends all do. Like, we spend a considerable amount of our lives doing that. The flip side of that is like, we're viewing this as something like, oh yeah, we can create something or use AI enhanced creation to basically create narratives and media that we would want to consume. But the darker side of that is, there are evil, horrible, terrible people, some with, 34 felony convictions. And it's like, and people that follow people with 34 felony convictions, but like, there are evil, terrible people, hateful people, like that, like giving the power of creativity to the masses so that they can create something using AI. Like, the level of censorship that would have to take place there to avoid just vitriolic hate, everything, even on the troll level, would be just astronomical in my eyes, and not worth the effort, really.
Yeah. I mean, there was that quote recently, or it might have been from a while ago, but it was on one of my social medias about like, it's like the promise of AI is that it would, figure out how to do dishes and do my laundry so that I can figure out how to write a book. And
yes,
like, I don't want AI to do the painting and the writing while I do the manual labor.
Right.
And it's like, I'm sorry, I know this is the thing that we're talking about, where it's like the robots are going to be mad at us because they don't get to do the fun stuff. But at the same time, can we at least act like we're in power and that they should do the things that we don't want to do so we can do the fun stuff?
Exactly.
Is it so bad to say?
No, not at all. Like, in my eyes, the promise of AI is that it would rise up and destroy all of humanity, and I would not have to deal with any of this,
no matter what. All roads lead to that. we can be as optimistic as we want to be.
Yep. But we'll see what comes of all of this and everything. I'm on record as saying that it would be interesting. This is a different thing and a tangent. But I'm on record as saying that it would be interesting in the long term for like the things that we do, like doing like podcasts and doing like reviews and everything. Like, I do feel like there is a weird interest that I have where, like, I have hundreds of hours of myself talking over the course of the past 11 years, recorded for posterity on the internet until the internet is dead. But just the idea that, like, if I were to pass away, heaven forbid, and like AI could take the collective sound profile of these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of recordings that I've done, where I specifically talk about my feelings and my reactions to media that I consume, would it be interesting or ethical or whatever? I wouldn't see it, but like, if it created like a thing that's like, oh, this is what Matt Hurt would think of, I'm trying to think of something like, Morbius 2, when it comes out, like, what would he think of
That's actually that's the grossest thing you've put out so far, and all this positing that we're talking about AI and all these terrible futures. That's the worst thing that you have willed into being.
Exactly. But like, what would that like? That would be interesting. I don't know. That's a form of like that's just talking about like we're getting into like the singularity and
well, Roger Ebert had that. I mean, at least in the sense that after he lost his voice, he was able to type things in and have, because he had so much of his voice recorded throughout the years, that he was able to do that. I don't know if technically that's like AI. I think that's more just like raw computing power, because this was like, this is before he passed, so this is like over 10 years ago. So the idea that if you have a lot of samples of your recorded voice, the idea that you're the one putting in what your voice is saying would be preferable, and not some AI deciding that it wants to say a bunch of hate speech in your voice.
Right.
But anyway, that was kind of an early version of kind of what you're talking about. The idea that
that's a good point.
Like if you have a lot of, audio, of yourself that, which you do.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say you do.
Yes, a ridiculous amount. It is ridiculous. Also, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. But anyway, make the
AI pay for your Patreon.
To make things easier for the future, I can't believe that the poop aliens invaded Indianapolis on that specific day and just washed the city with just poop falling from the sky, fecal matter in the canal. It's just I can't believe it. I'm gonna board my spaceship and I don't know.
We didn't stand a chance. We really didn't.
Nope. Just all the stain. It's gross. Anyway, I had other news things, but we're running all like this is. Let's skip some other news stuff. I do want to just really quickly mention one, because I said that we said this last week, but I don't believe we did, because I think this news came out after I recorded last week's episode. But the headline is, Mike Flanagan officially set to write and direct an all-new Exorcist film for Blumhouse. How did you feel about this news? And anything you want to talk about for another 55 minutes before we get to the actual reviews of this episode?
It better be a whole Exorcist series.
Yes.
I wasn't a fan of Believer. I think it's probably best that David Gordon Green, they tried to do the Halloween trilogy for it. Like, it didn't work. I guess I'm good with Universal just kind of saying, like, let's just not do that, and let's try to get someone who's hot in the horror universe, and clearly Mike Flanagan is. So, yeah, I mean, I just saw the first Omen a couple days ago. It's on Hulu, and like that was really solid. And that is a franchise and a genre that franchise that whatever. There's been a lot of like sequels that were not nearly as well received. It's probably the best like reviewed Omen movie since the original, I think. I
probably,
but probably. So, and that's a genre, the subgenre of, creepy kids, creepy devil kids, where, that's been kind of done to death. And yet it's like, it's a testament to, if you actually like, have an approach to the material and you care about, shot selection, storyboarding, just the work, the stuff that AI can't do, by the way.
Right.
For anyone that can't tell, I was doing a little bitchy head bob when I said that. When I said that AI can't do. So all that to say, I mean, yeah, Mike Flanagan is, he's a very, very strong voice in the horror, cinescape, TV scape. So why not? I mean, we'll see what he does. I mean, it's not, he's done movie. Didn't he direct the Ouija prequel?
Ouija Origin of
which
Evil.
Was solid. I mean, better than very different movie, but like, so he's done other movies that it's like, this isn't gonna be good, like on the face of it. So I think he's definitely earned goodwill through the projects that he's picked.
Absolutely.
Over his career.
Yep. And I also wasn't a fan of Exorcist Believer. You reviewed it with me, didn't you? Yes. No?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We
Yep.
reviewed it. I don't have the episode in front of me, but and yeah, we weren't hot on it. I didn't like it. And what I find interesting is twofold. One is that I'm not really a big Exorcist franchise fan. I think I've seen all of the movies, but it's just not something that I stick to or anything. But it's really interesting. If I could just celebrate Mike Flanagan, as a huge fan of him as I am, like, it's so interesting. Like you mentioned, Ouija Origin of Evil. That movie came out, I think, 8 years ago. And it's so interesting to me I think it's a positive mark on Mike Flanagan's, the clout that he has in the industry now, versus then. I don't know the specifics of how he came on board Ouija Origin of Evil, but it's interesting that, like, this was an installment of a franchise that he came on board with and made of an in-progress franchise. I don't believe he had anything to do with the original movie. He's just on for the prequel. And now, like 8 years later, after he has some of the best horror filmmaking in television and film under his belt, like, it's just fascinating to me that Blumhouse, which he has a very good working relationship with, and Universal, that he can come on board to this franchise that is a massive legacy franchise that they paid ridiculous amount of money to secure the rights to, specifically with the intent of making a trilogy. They sunk so much money into this that now Mike Flanagan is at a point where he doesn't have to come into it and be like, yeah, I'll make your next 2 movies in your trilogy. I'll retrofit the story I want to tell into this in progress thing. It's just like, no, we're going to do a whole new radical take on it. And we're going to give you the keys to this franchise because we believe in you and you can deliver greatness consistently. And I just think that that's great. That's good because by all accounts, I've seen of Mike Flanagan, and he has responded to at least one of my tweets. All that I've seen from him is he seems like the just like genuine, like good-natured person. And I have a ton of respect for him. And Mike, if you're listening, you're invited on the show. All
right.
Yeah. But having said all that, I also really just want him to make the Dark Tower. I just really do. So this is going to be something that he's going to take him away from that, but that's fine. He'll get to it eventually, hopefully. So anyway, that's all. That's not all the news I have, but that's all the news that we can fit into this episode, I would say. Brent, would you like to get into our first review of the evening while the sun is still out?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, nice. So for the featured review this week, we are going to be reviewing Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, which is currently in theaters. It was released in theaters on May 23rd, 2024. The premise, according to IMDb, is the origin story of renegade warrior Furiosa before her encounter and team up with Mad Max. Director was George Miller, and the writers were George Miller and Nick Lathoris. The cast includes Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth, Tom Burke, Ayla Brown, George Shevtsov, Lachi Holm, and John Howard. This is, of course, the latest installment in the Mad Max franchise. It is a prequel to, I think it was 2015's Mad Max Fury Road, which was a massive, I don't know, box office wise, I'm not sure if it was a massive hit, but like it is well regarded as one of the greatest like action movies of all time and a bunch of stuff. So having said all that, we're going to do a non-spoiler and spoiler review for Furiosa. When we switch to spoilers, we will play a clip from the trailer. But in non-spoilers, Brent, first, how do you feel about the Mad Max trilogy and Mad Max Fury Road? And how did that inform your enjoyment of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga? And by the way, you can send all hate mail of all kinds to Brent at awakeinthedark.com. It has the contact information.
That's a great way to set it up. I like the original trilogy. I feel like I probably saw those like throughout college, I would say. Like, I like them. Like, Thunderdome is obviously like very, like, it's very campy 80s. It's the most 80s by far, like, of the three. So like, you kind of just take that for what it is. But the first two, Mad Max and the Road Warrior especially is that's my favorite of the three, which I think is pretty common. So yeah, always like those. Not like a super fan, but always like enjoyed them, that sort of thing. Fury Road, I saw in 2015. This has been one of the ones that's been really challenging about as long as I've written about movies, which has been like 10 years. Because I just don't share, I'm just not caught up in that fervor and that enraptured in the whole, like, it's just one of those things that I absolutely appreciated the craft of it. Clearly there's just so much that's put on screen. There's, it's an exceptionally well directed movie in terms of like all of the action, which there's just a ton of in that. I liked it overall. I like the world building, which, I kind of like, it carries over from the original trilogy, but it definitely like expands it in a lot of ways. I just didn't get to that like extra level with Fury Road. And I've tried, like, I've watched it a few times. Like, I get it to an extent. Like, I get there, it's a ton of like technical craft to me. I don't get that extra, the things that usually, even in action movies, the things that kind of matter to me most, which are, just like characters, just storytelling, and just the pushback I know is that it's telling its story through action. I understand that, but the big thing for me too is it's intentionally relentless, even in a way that I don't think the original Mad Max trilogy is. I mean, it's just 2 hours of it's just so much. So anyway, all let's say, I like Fury Road well enough. I just am not on that effusive next level thing. Still have a ton of respect for it. Send me the hate mail, haters. When I found out about Furiosa, it was, again, like, for me, it's like, okay, like, I want to be in the boat. I don't want to be overboard. Like, I want to be in the boat. So, yeah, I kind of had hope for it because, I like Anya Taylor-Joy. I do like the world, but I was kind of hoping that this movie would have a little more of kind of what I was wanting, which kind of was just a little more time, just like slow down a tad and just like give me a little more like with like dialogue and just kind of like where things are sort of like just going and just like a little more kind of meat there. And I have to say, coming out of it, this is spicy take number one. I do think, upon first impression, I do think I had a better time with this movie than I did with Fury Road when I saw it in 2015, because it is longer. This is about a half an hour longer. But it is, you can say it's conventional, you can say that it's whatever, but it isn't just one long chase. It's, there are really breathtaking sequences in this that are very much in the vein of Fury Road, where they're insanely well choreographed and fun, but there's also like there's just beats. I don't even know. I'm not going to act like this is like the most revolutionary, cutting, subtle writing out there. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is very much like kind of the prequel playbook. But I have to say, I think the biggest thing for me is just like, just the idea that you can kind of take some breaks from stuff. You can take a break from the action. It really served me well this time. That's my truth. I have to speak it.
That's really interesting. So yeah, I definitely teed you up for the Fury Road slander. And like, here's the thing, to be completely honest, and it's documented because I remember like here's an anecdote about my relationship with Fury Road. I watched it on digital at home on my PlayStation maybe 2 hours before we recorded the episode reviewing it on the Obsessive Viewer. And for context, at the time, I was working nights for the most part. I was severely sleep deprived. So like that was a thing where it was like I had a finite amount of time to watch this movie. I watched it, I reviewed it, and I didn't have a good time. And I think part of that was because of the condition in which I watched it. And it wasn't anything too bad. I was just like, it's very light on character. It's very light on actual like story driven elements to it from my liking at the time. And it suffered for that because it didn't give me that to latch onto. And because of that, I couldn't really, among all of the beauty and spectacle of it, which it is a gorgeous, massive, spectacle-laden movie that is impressive on a technical level, I couldn't connect to it because it was basically like vroom vroom this way, oh now vroom vroom this way, and then roll credits. And so I've gone 8-9 years having not revisited it, never seeing it in the theater, anything like that. And so I rewatched it ahead of seeing Furiosa. And for added context, I also, before seeing Fury Road, like a day or two before, I had a plan to watch all 3 of the original movies in the lead up to it. And like, I remember watching the first one and just not really connecting with it. And then when I started the Road Warrior, I was just like not into it, and I ended up just turning it off. And that kind of soured me a little bit on it. Like, oh, okay, maybe this franchise isn't really for me. And then Fury Road came, and I was kind of I wasn't in a position to really take to it. So 8 or 9 years have passed. I rewatched Fury Road. I picked up on a bit more of the characterization and the world building. I kind of honed in on that because I had a decent night's sleep beforehand. And like, I liked it. I ended up enjoying it quite a bit on this rewatch. And I think I ended up rating it 4 stars, maybe 4.5 stars. But I was very impressed with it. So that made me excited to see Furiosa, and I ended up rating Furiosa 3.5 stars. I had upped my Fury Road rating to 4.5 stars. Furiosa I thought was fine. It was perfectly fine. It is, in terms of the spectacle, I appreciated that it isn't quite as bombastic with it as Fury Road was, because Fury Road does have that amount of like, just like holy shit, they're playing guitar on like poles as they're like on the war rigs and everything. It's like, what is this world? And like, I love that, but like, I don't know, there was less emphasis on the spectacle in Furiosa and more emphasis on characterization. But the weird thing is that like that also didn't really take with me, because I feel like that first act, like the whole format of the movie feels like it feels like either it should have been like an anthology television show limited series where each episode is like another part of this wasteland story. Because the way that the movie segmented that way, it just feels like it's front loaded with Furiosa's backstory as a child in the Green Place and her removal from the Green Place and her history and growing up. And like, that's a considerable amount of time. And like, it's a weird contrast to Fury Road, which begins with Max being captured and escaping. And it's just this big, huge set piece thing. And then we get like this character-driven thing for Furiosa, which I don't mind the difference there. What I mind is that it just builds toward what I feel like is a pretty standard revenge story that is the type of revenge story we've seen hundreds of times in movies. And with it tied to a movie of such like stature as something that's unique and spectacle-driven, it kind of faltered for me a little bit. So that's my word salad on Furiosa. But yeah, I still ended up rating it 3.5 stars. Let's discuss.
Yeah. I think with Fury Road, the thing for me more than the visual, like I love the visual innovation of it. I think a big part of it for me was just like the sonic assault. It's that movie. It feels like especially like really had just the roaring engines and stuff. I mean, it just sort of like. I just sort of had I don't know if it's ear fatigue or just whatever, but I was just like kind of burnt out after a while with that. Whereas this, I mean, look, I'm not going to act like this is like a quiet movie, but necessarily it is more dynamic. There are scenes that are, of dialogue and development and just quiet, quite frankly, that are just, again, it makes the action stuff pop more. I mean, I can't, that's why I can't say like, I'm not going to say like Furiosa is like a better movie than Fury Road. I'm not going to say that. What I can say is I had a better time watching it than I had watching Fury Road 9 years ago, whenever it came out.
Interesting.
The experience overall was just more enjoyable for me. And I absolutely, like, I agree with what you like. This does have a lot of like prequel pitfalls, I would say. I don't think Furiosa is even an especially interesting character. I think that's why I was like, going into this, I was like, okay, well, I know it's Anya Taylor-Joy this time, but like, I didn't really care about the Furiosa character from Fury Road. So like, it kind of felt like a double down that I didn't really care about, but I'm like, for me, this was just another way into the world.
Yeah.
So kind of my thing, I don't want to skip ahead, but like moving forward, it's like I'm at this weird place with this franchise. Like, I would watch another movie. I'd watch another Mad Max movie. I'd watch Tom Hardy if he chooses to do it, since the Venom franchise is coming to a close, I think. Yeah. Last Dance seems pretty definitive. If he comes back, like, I'm cool for that. I mean, Charlize Theron probably doesn't want. I know they have like a hellish time making that movie, apparently. Right. So maybe none of them want to do it. Regardless, like, I would be fine with that. It's just like, just put like a little more story. Like, I love the chases. Chases are great. This what Chase is my favorite scene in Furiosa. The stowaway sequence is amazing. We'll talk about it. But like, it's just like, just a little more balance, like, please.
Yeah.
Because that's what I feel like I got in Furiosa. And again, I'm not even saying that, like you said, like, the balance is like revelatory and it's like doing something so different with the story. Like, it's not. I'm not going to say that.
Right.
But it is something that's not just chases the whole time. So
that I agree. It's something that I don't know. I do feel like the segments just didn't mesh well with me. It didn't have the flow that Fury Road had. Like, Fury Road is 2 hours. It is pretty straightforward in terms of plot and everything, but Furiosa just feels like there's, like I said, it's front loaded with a lot of backstory. It's interesting that you say that, like, Furiosa wasn't a character that you were particularly interested in. While rewatching Fury Road, I thought, okay, this is good, because like, Charlize Theron is doing a great job. The moment where she finds out, like, what happened with the green place, like, that is an incredible scene in a movie that doesn't have a lot of character focus on it, or at least doesn't have it focused prominently, save for like that one scene. And because of that made me interested to see her backstory, see how George Miller would tell this story in this prequel sense. And like, it does that's the biggest issue I have, is it does fall into those prequel pitfalls that just feels like there are certain moments in this movie that feel like the not to invoke Attack of the Clones, but like, it is like the prequelization of it all is really kind of frustrating. Like, there's a line in Attack of the Clones where Obi-Wan says to Anakin, like, why do I get the sense you're going to be the death of me? And it's like a cheeky line. And it's like, oh, it's because, New Hope, haha. And there's certain things in here that kind of point to the future of the franchise to an extent, not that egregiously, but it's something that's just like I don't know, like we'll talk about it in spoilers, but like the whole arm, taking the arm off thing, I thought would have been a little bit bigger of a thing, and the way it's handled is just kind of like, okay, fine, yeah, I don't know, we'll talk more in detail there, but I don't know, it could be more nitpicking than anything, but it just feels like when the movie and the story that's being told it feels more typical of just that general like revenge story plot, it suffers for it because it's coming from Fury Road, which is light on plot, but still was amazing in terms of spectacle. I don't know if any of that connected, but yeah, it suffered for it for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, what do we want from George Miller? Like, it seems like people are really responding to the chase stuff, to all of the action, the spectacle, everything he's able to put together. Like, is this? I'm not suggesting that we want someone else besides George Miller to direct Mad Max movies, but like, when it comes to fleshing out the story, like, is he as good at that? And I think almost everyone would argue, no, that's like not his strong suit. So like, I guess then, I don't want to say where do we go from here, but like, I guess I don't know what his intention was with it. I think maybe he just, he did want to flesh out the world, and he did want to, tell more backstory of this character. But I agree, none of it is super, original when it comes to, like you said, like a revenge story. Like, it's not. It's not. I'm not. I would not argue that. Yeah. But so I don't know. I mean, I don't know that these are characters that need their own like prequels and their own spin-offs. Right. I don't know that it's that kind of franchise. No. I think this could be a franchise of like, just give us the stuff that we like.
Yeah. I'll kind of amend what I said a little bit about it feeling like it belonged more as, because it was so segmented and everything, it feels like it was belonged more as an anthology film or anthology show, that it would have fit better. But like, I will say, like I already said this, I haven't watched, I never saw Beyond Thunderdome. I watched maybe the first 5 minutes of The Road Warrior, and I barely remember the original movie. But from what I understand or gather is that the franchise as a whole feels like an anthology thing. Like, it feels like each installment is a different thing. It's a different vibe. It's a different kind of story. It's not supposed to be this interconnected, like, massive universe. That's my understanding of it. And I think that also is partially why Furiosa suffers a little bit. I wouldn't say suffers a little bit with me, because I don't know the context of the whole franchise, but I feel like that's an identity in the franchise, that this idea of it just being just like samples of this strange punk rock post-apocalyptic world, with all of this mayhem and craziness, that to try to, this late in it, in terms of time that this franchise has existed, this late in it, to basically give us an origin story for a character from a previous installment feels like the franchise itself, on a base level, is not equipped to handle that type of story in this franchise, or it goes counter to what has come before it. And then you add the fact that the movie is segmented into different chapters. That also just kind of feels like a little like, okay, this is kind of like slice of life, like slices of information, and not really not a particularly well told cohesive story. So
yeah, I did not need like a prequel. Like, they could have made Mad Max Beyond Fury Road, and if they had again just maybe made it a little more back, because like Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron, like if they had done that again, I know that's probably not going to happen at this point. But like, let's say things had gone differently, I would be there for that too. Like, I'm not married to a Furiosa prequel. Like, I want to just spend time in this world. I love the spectacle. Like, I love that stuff. I just want some breaks, and I want a little more story, and just kind of like, the other stuff. That's so again, if I mean, we'll maybe talk about box office, but like, if they make a third one of these that George Miller does, that's with, Warner's or whatever, like, I mean, I'm game with it. Like, he can kind of do whatever, you know, I'm cool with it. I do want to spend time in this world. It's very unique. Especially on this scale, like it's very different than, what you're getting elsewhere in blockbusters. So like, I love the idea of it. It's just, I just had specific kind of nitpicks with Fury Road. That doesn't mean that like I just don't like this thing. It was just hangups that I had with that specific entry. So that weren't as much a problem for me, clearly, with Furiosa, because I had fun with it.
Nice. Beyond Fury Road, God damn, that is like, I don't know if that's anything that's been pitched or anything, or that was just off your noggin, but I don't know why I just said noggin. I've never said that word in my life, but off the dome. But yeah, apparently like he wants to make another installment that's called Mad Max The Wasteland. But like Beyond Fury Road is a perfect title given Beyond Thunderdome. Like, Jesus Christ.
Fury Road Plus. Yes. They make it a Mad Max subscription service. Yeah.
There we go. But yeah, it's something that like I don't feel an investment in the world. And I think that's also why it just kind of didn't fall apart for me, but it didn't leave as strong an impression on me as I feel like the movie should have, given the pedigree of spectacle that is Fury Road, and I just keep thinking about like Gas Town and like the different like sections of the movie and locations, and how like, yeah, it's a prequel. Like these places are referenced in Fury Road but not seen. It's like, it's weird. It doesn't have the level of it doesn't have a stature to it that we're like, oh, we get to see Gas Town, we get to see what this is, we have action in this location that's referenced in Fury Road. Like that doesn't really fit that well in terms of the prequel ness of it, because anything that's really referenced in terms of world building in Fury Road, save for like the disturbing stuff with like the mothers and the mother's milk stuff, all of that. But like anything that's referenced in terms of an aesthetic of the world around what we see on screen, it's not presented as like a mystery thing. It's not something that needs to be fleshed out in a prequel. Because also it's a prequel, like who cares? Like this is the version of it before all of that. Like that's not going to really enhance.
People walk out of Fury Road scratching their head. What do they do at Gas Town?
Yeah, exactly.
What happens at Bullet Town?
Yeah.
That's gonna be a real head scratcher, that one, if you can't figure out what they do in that area.
Lot of frustrating noggins coming out of that theater. So it's just a lot of stuff that I also feel wasn't needed. Even though I felt strongly about Furiosa as a character in Fury Road when I revisited it, the actual origin story of her didn't satisfy me, because again, it's a kind of a typical revenge story, and it just didn't really capture my interest all that much.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like weird, like kind of upgrade in that it's a bit more like just a bit more balanced and modest. But again, I can't say like I think it would be very. I can't imagine it's a widely held opinion that Furiosa is a better movie than Fury Road. Right. And I mean, that's why I can't contend that myself, but I can only speak to my experiences that I had a slightly better time watching Furiosa just because it was just a little bit more manageable.
Yeah, I can totally understand where you're coming from with that. Like 100%. I totally get it. Do you want to talk about box office a little bit? I don't have any figures in front of me or anything before we go into spoilers.
I don't either.
Okay.
I know that this and Garfield really bombed over Memorial Day weekend and everything, and kind of what we were talking about with like, you know, just movie theater stuff. I'm still mourning The Fall Guy. That's the bigger thing for me.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a larger conversation we don't necessarily have to have right now about like,
I was going to tee you up
windows.
For that in Potpourri.
Yeah, I mean that's the bigger thing is like, you know, and like the other part of it too is like how piracy factors into all this. Like I'm telling you, like if you put something on PVOD, I'm not trying to virtue signal here, I promise, but like I don't pirate stuff. I don't know how to do that. I mean, well, okay, I could figure out how to do it, but like, I'll like pay for rentals, like I'll do all that stuff. But let's face it, there are plenty of people that won't. And like, once that stuff hits PVOD, there are a ton of people who are not going to pay anything to see it.
Right.
And you're just devaluing the product. All that to say, I believe that the schedule with release windows obviously is very dynamic, and it's project to project or film to film, however you want to say it. And so if they're watching the figures for Furiosa and knowing that it's not doing well in theaters and that it's about to get pulled from theaters, like they want to put it on PVOD as soon as possible just to recoup costs, because there aren't second run theaters anymore. That's dollar theaters are not a thing anymore. If it's not going to play in these other theaters, if it's not going to play in the main theaters anymore, there's really no downtime. But that artificial window that was there for months previously was there for a reason. It created a demand and an urgency to see the movie, which we know, but that's starting to go away. All that, how it factors into Furiosa is, this didn't do well, and the way that opening weekend is so weighted now, I know it's always been a big thing, but especially now, it's like, if it doesn't do well opening weekend, it's like, screw it, it might as well just be out of theaters in 3 weeks. They just like, studios have zero patience for something that doesn't open huge. So anyway, all that to say, that's like the bummer to me when we're talking about like the value of movies. I think it really starts to go down when there's just like, I want to say it doesn't play in theaters for weeks and weeks, because maybe it just doesn't make sense. Yeah. But so I can't say that I have the answer, but it bums me out that some of these movies that seem like they have a lot of appeal aren't doing well, and it seems like people don't have the answers as to what would make it better. So
have they announced the PVOD release for Furiosa?
I don't think so, but I would be wholly unsurprised if it's this month.
Okay. Yeah.
June. Would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, that is a whole other can of worms. It's really a shame, because it is kind of indicative of short attention span of just the general public. It's the interesting, like, kind of TikTokification of release windows is it's bad. It's bad. And like you said, once you release it on PVOD, it gets on to piracy sites, and like that is severely diluting the ability for it to make any money or anything. It's
and just devalues the product. I mean, it doesn't, you're not going out to the theater to see it. You're watching it in bits and pieces, on Twitter or TikTok or whatever. And it's just not I'm not trying to say the theatrical experience, but it's just, it's like, it's just like not, it doesn't make, it makes them less special inherently.
Yeah.
And that to me is more the bummer. But having said that, I will say, I don't want to go off too much of a tangent. I will say, like, it's such an interesting thing, the other side of the coin, for, because these are bigger budget movies that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I remember early on, not early on, but like when I was in college, especially, and I was in areas where these limited, where these more independent movies would be really limited, and they'd only come out in a few cities, and that's still kind of a thing.
Yeah.
that they do sometimes for release patterns. And I'm like, just put it on demand so I can pay $20 for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, that's the opposite thing. But then art house theaters are suffering too there. So it's like, I don't think there is a cure all for any of this.
No.
And I certainly don't pretend to have the answers, but I do know that it does definitely bum me out to see things that it's like, again, going back to the Fall Guy, I know that's not the movie we're talking about, but like, good God.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not even saying that's a failure of marketing. Like, this is like, this is me saying to the public, like, movies are canceled till y'all can learn how to behave. Like,
exactly.
Come on. Like, I didn't like, it's not like an amazing movie, but like, it has 4-quadrant appeal. Like, it's just one of those things that is like, who would not want to?
Yeah. It's got star power behind it.
Yeah. It's just, anyway.
Yeah.
It's just, for me, it's more just, and again, that's why it's more of a cultural thing of, like, people just don't care as much about movies anymore.
Right.
Like, it's an unquantifiable thing that's super, super easy to get like stats or metrics for. But I mean, you know, you look at stuff like that and you're just kind of like, yeah, these don't mean as much to people anymore. And that hurts.
Well said, as depressing and bleak as it is. And it's rough. Also, it's kind of funny, or it's the deeper issue with pulling movies from theaters if they're not performing well is that it's also depriving certain enterprising gentlemen from the opportunity of putting an A-list reservation in and going to the theater and scanning their tickets.
Exactly
to get around
exactly the A-list.
Yep. So there is that added thing there. But yeah, do you want to go into spoilers for Furiosa? Or anything else?
I don't really know that I have much to spoil about it.
I honestly don't either. And it's funny because we haven't even talked about Chris Hemsworth or Tom Burke or anything. But we'll go into spoilers for Furiosa and kind of talk a little bit about some of the specifics, and then we'll get to our secondary review. Of course, check the show notes for timestamps if you want to navigate around spoilers. Those show notes can also be found at obsessiveviewer.com/OV431. So we're going to go into spoilers for Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. When we come back, we're going to be spoiling the movie.
Whatever you have to do. However long it takes. Promise me you'll find your way home. Furiosa. Give me this promise.
All right, so spoilers on for Furiosa and Mad Max Saga. Let's start with Chris Hemsworth. Since we didn't really talk about him all that much, I think that his performance is pretty much the standout for me throughout the entire movie. He's he fits very well in the kind of maniac-laden world that George Miller has created here. How'd you feel about Chris Hemsworth as Dr. Dementis, and some finer points about the plot and movie itself?
Is his name really Dr. Dementis, or is that a Dr. Demento thing?
No. I think it's Dr. Dementis. It is in the, at least that's what
really?
IMDb says. Yeah.
Oh God, that's so funny. What is his degree? Okay, we don't need to talk about that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an honorary degree.
Yeah. Is he a nose surgeon? Yeah. Yeah. No, he's a lot of fun in this. Yeah, it's absolutely like he's having a ball, and like it's surprising. Again, like his career, I guess, was just in a different place in 2015 and everything. And of course, he was, headlong into the whole Marvel thing. Love and Thunder, I don't know if that's gonna be the final Thor movie or whatever, but regardless, like he's, the MCU thing is sort of like slowing down for him or whatever. So it is fun that he can kind of just like go out in the desert and just like, just have fun with his mates down under. And yeah, I mean, it's a fun performance. I think that the moments that he gets with Anya Taylor-Joy are like, there's real menace there. Like they're two good actors, or, so it's like, it's not a surprise that their moments together really have that sort of like just seething quality
Right.
to it. Like you said, it's nothing about this. The revenge story is particularly novel, but it's, you know, those beats kind of, I think, come out a little better in the performances, and they're both solid. Like I didn't think at all about like Taylor-Joy and like Charlize Theron. Like, you know, it doesn't matter. Like Tom Hardy is playing Mad Max, of course, is played by Mel Gibson, and it's like this, like you said, this franchise doesn't get hung up with like whether or not actors are play, you know, like it doesn't get hung up with that
direct
stuff. And
continuity, yeah.
I really appreciate that. Actually, I wish kind of more franchises, I guess, would do more of that in a not a cynical way, but just like in a just don't worry about it way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So anyway, yeah, they're both solid. Like Tom Burke in this too.
Yeah.
Which speaking of like whatever, like the first thing I remember seeing him in was Souvenir, the A24 drama, and he is such a piss boy that I mean, I'm sorry, piss boy is derogatory. I mean, piss boy in Furiosa is actually a character who is helpful with his piss, so that would actually not be the derogatory version. But yeah, Tom Burke is awful. His character is in the Souvenir. He's like a drug addict, like he's just like he's total leech on anyway, whole thing. So anyway, I feel like I've seen him in maybe a couple other things since, but I like him a good bit here. And like I kind of alluded to this earlier, but like the stowaway, like that section is incredible. Like that's like when I was watching that section, I was like, summer has begun. Like everyone has that. I think like especially like the movie people kind of have that like summer has begun. That is my summer has begun section of this movie.
Nice.
Specifically. And I'm referring to, it's called The Stowaway, and it's when Furiosa is like, she's like at the bottom of this rig, and like it's just insane the stuff they're coming up with. What do they call it? Like the helicopter things. I don't know if those were in Fury Road, but they were in I think The Road Warrior.
Oh, really? Okay. I don't remember them in Fury Road.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
Regardless, the way they're rendered here is really fun. It's like a weird parasailing sort of things, parachuting. Like they go through the air a lot in this movie, which Fury Road had a lot, of course, with cars and all they're flipping over these. Like, and Stowaway has that middle sequence in Furiosa has that as well, but it adds that element of flight that really there's a really fun payoff at the I can spoil the whatever the thing that activates where it's like the shredder with like the that was a great denouement to that, like that specific section before she gets off and he comes back and all that stuff. So yeah, that was like by far my favorite section. I liked Taylor-Joy and Burke together as well. Like again, nothing crazy sophisticated about what they're doing with the characters, but it's like it's enough for me to be like, yes, I'm invested. I want to see what's going on. So yeah, solid performances. I would say, that I think does make up for like not the most incredible writing ever.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting. I feel like in the non-spoiler, I did dog the story a bit for being kind of just, standard revenge story. But I did appreciate to a certain extent the way that it positions like Chris Hemsworth, his character kind of positioning against Immortan Joe, and we know like what the dominant faction is in Fury Road. We know like what is to come in the future, but I liked seeing the kind of, I guess, messy politics of it all, where it's grimy in this post-apocalyptic world, but it's still like it feels like these two factions going up against each other or becoming like part of an arm of the bigger faction for survival. And it's just it was really interesting, and I kind of wish that there was a little bit more to that rather than a focus on Furiosa, which is a shame because it's Furiosa, the movie. So,
yeah, and again, that's why, like what I said, like I would be fine with the Wasteland being about Dr. Dementis versus like a Morton Joe. Like,
yeah,
I'm cool with that. Like, I don't, quite frankly, like, I want to say the characters are interchangeable, but like I could follow a lot of these. There's a lot of oddballs in this world.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm cool with following probably a lot of them. So I agree with you. And yeah, that was fun. That's sort of a like a Joker Bane moment. I feel like between memories threatening to blow up. Is it Gastown at that point?
Gastown, I think.
He's bargaining for Bullet Town.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's very much a like, you can't kill me sort of thing. And Morton Joe just kind of has a Bane air about him a little bit, even though he doesn't beat anyone up here. But it seems like he could.
Yeah.
There's that threat's definitely on the table. That dude's scary.
The kind of final thing, I don't really know how much more we have to say about the movie, but the kind of classic prequel thing of it where it's, Fury Road, she's missing an arm. And so we need to find how she is missing the arm. And I don't know. This could be, I don't know if this is intentional. This could be just me, not necessarily making excuses for it, but this could be me looking into it a little bit deeper than what is there. Because as we've established, like, the writing isn't that strong across these movies. But I, throughout the movie, was so convinced that it was leading toward a certain path where I thought it was going to subvert our expectations about how she could have lost her arm, specifically because throughout the movie there are the constellations tattooed on her arm that is basically her map to get back to the green place. I had this theory throughout it that it's going to end up that she's going to willingly amputate her arm. Like, she's going to make that choice to preserve the green place from factions. And I was like, that could be pretty interesting. That's interesting. And then no, it just gets crushed between two vehicles, and then she escapes, and it's like, okay, fine. Well, okay. How'd you feel about that?
Did she cut it off? Because I know it was dangling from the handcuff thing, but like, how did she actually like get? It's unclear.
Yeah, it's not clear. Yeah. It doesn't really. I assume. I would be curious if there's like a deleted scene where she's kind of like chewing through the like remaining tissue and stuff, because that's the only kind of
because I know it was in gnarly shape, because like you said, it does get like crushed and everything.
Yeah.
But and then that's what she does to get out of there.
Yep. And then we get the lovely shot of the maggots. Gross, disgusting. For me it's like that was that thing. It's like, see, that's the other thing to me where I didn't get as hung up on the call and response of the movie and then the prequel. Yeah, because I don't care that much about how she lost her arm. Like, right. I didn't care about it in Fury Road that much, and I didn't really care about it here. I knew it had to happen because that's how prequels work. Sure. And it happened, and I was like, okay, that's fine. It's good a reason as any, I suppose. But I like your reasoning that that would have been more. See, this is what I'm talking about. Like something that would be more, have some level of profundity, or say something about the story and her. And it's like, no, it's just it's just not. It's not going. That's why it's like, if you're going to do a whole prequel and make it about this whole character, like I don't know, put something in there, but yes, there's this like middle ground that should be reached with it, I think, or something, because here's the thing, like if he was going to subvert our expectations and make it be like a monumental thing for her to do it, to preserve her home and thereby casting her out from it, or making it so that she can never go back or whatever, that would have been a really interesting character beat. That would have really been a good way to just kind of like further develop the character. But the flip side of that is it could have even been like It could have been like a hot tub time machine thing where like it's just like, oh, she's gonna lose the arm now. Oh no. Oh, she's gonna lose the arm now. But it could have been that. But like having it be a pretty like in a like
you want more hot tub time machine in your Fury in your Mad Max franchise.
Yes, exactly. But like having it be a relatively inconsequential thing just feels like a little bit empty because like it's a world filled with tons of people that
it's arbitrary.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. And it's filled with tons of people that all have these eccentricities. It's like the whole thing about the movie is that, and it's like, okay, it's just adding to the pile. You froze for a little bit, but I think you're back. So, anything else that we can discuss in spoilers for Furiosa? I kind of feel like those are the biggest parts that I have with it. Anything that jumps out to you?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think like in terms of like spoilers or anything. I would just say like, like I had a good time with it, and I feel like I'm sort of getting the Fury Road fervor a little more much later on.
Sure.
So like I'm kind of, not that I like Furiosa as much as everyone seems to like Fury Road. I'm not equating those things, but like I'm starting to like see that like, okay, like if this can just be a little bit more kind of parsed out and not just one huge glob of crazy mania, like I can have more fun with these. So
I
appreciate it for that, if nothing else.
Yeah I don't know why I just said yo. Like that is like, I think I was going to say no, or like as in like no, I totally get that, or I don't know, but that's another thing for the AI. Like in the future, I'm just going to be saying, yo, this movie was great. This is the only
instance of you ever saying yo.
Exactly.
So grab it from this, yeah.
Yo, this movie was dope. Anyway, I don't really have anything else to say on Furiosa. I ended up rating it, like I said, 3.5 stars out of 5. I did enjoy it. Slightly less than you did, Brent, but I do still think that it is a good spectacle movie, despite not being as spectacular as Fury Road was by my count. But it's still a spectacle, and it's still something that I think benefits from seeing in the theater now more than ever. What did you end up rating it on Letterboxd? And any closing thoughts on Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga?
Yeah, I give it 3.5 as well. Again, like pretty much purely for the action stuff.
Yeah,
like the stuff, and you would say like, okay, well, that like wouldn't you love Fury Road because it's all that. It's like, well, I like that there's more downtime, but yeah, like I not just Stowaway, but like again, like now we're spoilers, like the final, with Furiosa and like Dementis, like that ride is awesome. Like they go around this canyon. It's like, God, like there's multiple shots where I'm just like, that looks extremely dangerous. So that's fun. That's what fun action is all about. So, I hope people who, I don't know, I whoever wants to see this, whoever should see it. Yes.
Yeah. So that's our review of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. It is currently in theaters for now. Check it out and let us know what you thought of the movie. Once again, you can email me, matt@obsessiveviewer.com, or reach me on all the socials. Brent, are you ready to go into our secondary review? We might do, I don't know if we'll do necessarily a spoiler section for it, so we'll check the show notes for timestamps if we do, but yeah, are you ready to get into our secondary review?
Yeah, let's hit it.
Okay, awesome. So before we get to our secondary review, I want to take a quick moment, as I always do, to remind you that if you like the show, please take a moment to follow us on social media and subscribe to and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or whatever your preferred podcast app is. And don't forget to subscribe to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast's YouTube channel as well, where I'm posting more videos occasionally and live streams of podcasts. And also, if you're interested in starting a podcast of your own, you can go to Libsyn and use promo code OBSESS when you sign up for a new account. account, you'll get up to 2 months free depending on when you sign up during the month, and we'll get a commission on it as well. More details on that in the show notes. I've been using Libsyn to host all 3 of the podcasts for 11 years now and never had a problem, so I highly recommend it. So all that said, now back to the show, and I'm going to bring us in to our secondary review of Hitman with a clip from the trailer.
No, I don't buy it.
What?
You're not a hitman. You can't be. I tried looking you up, and nothing. It's like you don't even exist.
I guess I'm just your fantasy.
So what's the biggest difference between the real you and your occupation?
By the way, my name is Gary Johnson, and I'm a fake hitman.
All right, so our secondary review is for Hitman, which hits Netflix today, June 6th, as of this release of this episode. The premise, according to IMDb, is a professor moonlighting as a hitman of sorts for his city police department descends into dangerous, dubious territory when he finds himself attracted to a woman who enlists his services. Director was Richard Linklater, and writers were Richard Linklater and Glenn Powell, based on an article by Skip Hollandsworth. And the cast includes Glenn Powell, Adria Arjona, and Retta, and other people in the movie as well. So in non-spoilers, Brent, how'd you feel about Hitman? How'd you feel about it?
Yeah, this is from Richard Linklater, who linked earlier with Glenn Powell on Everybody Wants Some, which came out in 2016. Mm-hmm. And they're both Texans, and I'm sure they were like, let's do a movie together at some point. Yeah. And here we are. I was with this for a while. I have to say, like, this is my second hot take. This kind of fizzled out for me.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I have to say, I was with it for a while. It's fun. The 2 leads, Glenn Powell, and I'm sorry, what was the actress's name?
Adria Arjona?
Yeah. So they had a lot of they had like solid chemistry. I mean, earlier on, I was getting like Out of Sight vibes, which is like, that's like one of my favorite movies, nice. About 2 people that are on, opposite sides of the law, essentially,
sure.
But find themselves falling for one another, which is, I mean, that's a premise for a decent amount of movies, but there's something about this is very kind of cat and mouse. So, sure. So I was with it, and I just, as it kept going on, I started to care like less and less about, without going into spoilers, like how things ended up resolving in terms of the criminal parts of their story. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't have that same tension of like I wanted them to like be together, but there was just all these other parts of how the story like had to resolve that I just kind of thought were kind of a grind. And it was a weird thing. I know this got really strong reviews out of Venice last September, and Linklater, I'm a big fan of in general. Certainly, like, he's directed some amazing movies, some that aren't as great. So you kind of, I mean, you never know. There's kind of a wider range for him. Yeah, this definitely is not like a bad movie by any means. Like, I think it's well made and it's entertaining. People were certainly taken with it. I just kind of, as it went on, I was surprisingly like kind of underwhelmed rather. Just sort of, and by the ending, I was just like, I don't care anymore. I don't know. And this is another one I do want to rewatch. I will say, I didn't like take notes on it. I was pretty engaged with it though. Like, I don't know. So this is another thing. Like, it's nice to be able to get second passes at things.
Sure.
And that is the nice thing about Netflix, is that, like, this wouldn't be me going out to the theater again. This is probably something that, quite frankly, I'll probably end up watching again later this week when it's on Netflix, and
nice.
See if I'm maybe in a different mood and it hits better. Who knows? But that's where I ended up on my first run.
That's interesting, because I was much higher on this movie than you were, for sure. But I definitely get your criticisms with it. Personally, I think that when it hits Netflix, if you're listening to this day of it hit today, There is at least a thing that when you do revisit it, Brent, like maybe you'll be able to just, put your imagination into it and have AI create a different version of it. But
it's the only way.
Exactly. But no, I really kind of vibed with this movie. I was very much into it. It's not going to be like movie of the year quality for me or anything like that, but I thought that it was a really entertaining and engaging character study of a very unique and honestly not that interesting of a character. But still like creating an interest in him. And I think part of that is Glenn Powell. Like I wrote in my Letterboxd review that every new thing I see Glenn Powell in just further confirms to me that this guy is a bona fide movie star. Like I've had that thought every time I've seen the trailer for Twisters. Like I am so amped for that because this dude is like so magnetic in everything that I've seen him in. And I put in my Letterboxd review also that this one in particular gives him a lot of room to have fun and deliver a nuanced performance as well. Because he does a lot of disguises, a lot of interesting things that he does on a character level, that I think worked really well. And it kind of really blended well into Richard Linklater's kind of style. It's not a movie like Slacker from like the early days of his career or anything like that. It's not as laid back as that or Dazed and Confused. It's not like vignettes or anything like that. It's just like it feels lived in. It feels like a world and a character that exists, and everything around him is pretty much on the level. Like there's things that like Jasper, the cop colleague that he's kind of at odds with throughout the movie. He's a little heightened. He's a little bit crazy. But for the most part, everything is pretty grounded. And I got very strong vibes of like, Catch Me If You Can, and where Catch Me If You Can was very much built around Frank Abagnale Jr. as a character that the movie explored through his heightened shenanigans and the world around him, all of the deceit and fun energy of the crimes he was committing. Like here we have somewhat of an inverse with Glenn Powell playing Gary Johnson, who is pretending to be a hitman in sting operations and then falls in love with someone who he persuades against hiring a hitman. It's just like there's a nuance to it and to his character of like wanting to become someone he wants to be rather than who he is as a person. I think there's a lot of nuance to that I think is really brought to life really well from Linklater and from Glenn Powell, both as an actor and co-writer on it.
Yeah, co-writer. That struck me at the end of the credits. I think this is definitely like this is probably one of the better performances of. This is definitely the sharpest comedic role I've seen him in. So far. So yeah, he's I don't have like a problem with performances. I think in hearing like to kind of sharpen what I was saying, before, it's like I think my bigger issue, I think the reason it sort of fizzled out for me is because I have a certain thing with these movies where they're adapted from true stories, and I know that they say it's very cheeky. They always say like this is mainly true and all this stuff. Like they can say whatever they want. I don't care. It's at the end of the day, you're the storyteller. And for me, this is just one of those things where it's like I just kept saying in my head, it didn't happen like this enough times where I was just like, there's just a credibility that was just sort of lost. And again, I know this wasn't a documentary. I know he's the one telling the story and he can tell it however he wants. But at the same time, I'm just like, not only did the real events not happen like this, but it wouldn't happen like this even if this were in real life. You know what I mean? Like, just that there's that certain, like, incredulous. I think I became more incredulous. That's the word I would use, kind of as the movie went on, and to the point where it just kind of stacking up, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm losing interest in how it's resolved because it doesn't feel like it would get here. I know it sounds like I'm being like a real bummer because I know this is like a it's like a it's a
It's more farce.
I don't want to say
than
an
anything.
action comedy. Yeah, it's a farce.
It's a
Really. I
comedy,
mean, it
yeah.
is. So yeah, it's not meant to be like a docudrama or anything. But even in, even in crime comedies, I feel like for me, there just has to be that certain level of like, okay, is this how this would happen at all? You know, and then given that it is based on a true story, it's like, well, that makes it even tougher to square.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of that was the bigger issue I just had with the really the directing. I mean, quite frankly, I think that's what it kind of came down to. But I think this could potentially do well on Netflix. It reminded me of Bernie the most.
I was going to say that too. Yeah,
that was the one. See, Bernie for me is one where I know, again, that's not a movie I expect to be all just the facts, ma'am.
Right.
But that's a movie where that is also performance driven, that Jack Black is really, really wonderful in. But it's like, it is conjecture based on what they're kind of assuming happened, kind of in between like the cracks of like the thing. So I'm okay with that if you're saying that like we're guessing this is probably what happened.
Right.
I'm a little more comfortable with that. Whereas this is just like, there's just the way that this stuff like has to resolve, and I'm just like, I don't think the police would be this stupid about. I don't want to get into spoilers, but like just things relating to the crime aspects of it.
Yes, I totally get what you're saying there, and I agree as well to an extent, specifically because the way that the kind of final act of the movie plays out, it kind of comes up pretty suddenly, and it comes up in a way that is a little sudden, and it's a particular turn in the plot that I feel like doesn't necessarily have carry over the energy and steam that it should, because everything up to that point has been pretty kind of quirky, meet cute romance comedy stuff, which is stuff that I love. I adore that type of stuff, and I think that's why I was so keyed into it. But then when you get to a turn where it becomes more of that criminal crime comedy thing, it does lose a little bit of steam, and then it just kind of continues losing steam until the ending, which we won't spoil, but like that title card at the end is just like, okay, yeah, like I was like, I'm glad, but also like, what are, like, I understand the deeper meaning of it about the relationship and commitment, all of, like, I understand that, but it just felt like a big swing that didn't sit right with me until I saw the title card that kind of contextualized it for me a little bit. And I don't know, I just kind of think that that's a slight shame, a blemish in a movie that I was enjoying quite a bit. So
yeah, and I mean, not really a spoiler. The end credit song is the same as The Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, okay.
Cast Your Fate to the Wind, which that ending scene in Wolf of Wall Street is incredible. I love that. So that kind of stuck with me, and then it was in this, and I was like, I don't even know if that was intentional. I don't really care. But that was like one other thing that I'm just like, okay, I'm ready for this to be done. I sound really down on it. I agree with basically what you said. Essentially, it's like a tonal mismatch. The sexy comedy stuff, totally here for that. Totally game for that. But when it gets into the more like crime drama stuff, I just stopped caring about that aspect of it, but that factors in a lot into the third act. So
yeah, and there's a pacing issue with it too, because it's like once we get that, it's like a run to the end. It is a very quick sprint where it's covering so much narrative ground that it's like, okay, well, like 10 minutes ago we had all of this other stuff going on, like, and now we're suddenly doing this, and suddenly it's like the climax of the movie that is bolstered by this thing that happened 10 minutes ago rather than an hour and 10 minutes ago. And so that kind of is a little bit discombobulating for me. So yeah. Anything else on Hitman? Performances.
I'm gonna give it another watch. Maybe it'll gel better for me the second time. But yeah, I think for me it just kind of comes down to that tonal mismatch. But like solid effort for Glenn Powell. I'm sure he's definitely he's definitely a movie star, and he's kind of rising at everything. So like, that part's great. Yeah, it's just, I think, just like a tonal thing for me just didn't quite work. But who knows? I'm sure I'll watch it again on Netflix, and who knows? Maybe I have a better experience.
Nice. Yeah. I liked it. Don't know if I'll be talking about it later in the year or early next year, rather. But it was a very good Netflix movie. I will say that.
Yeah.
So that is our review of Hitman, which again is on Netflix as of today of this release, June 6th, 2024. Brent, do you have anything you want to talk about for Potpourri? I did want to scratch your brain about one thing, but if we're running long, we can scratch it another time. I can scratch your brain another time. Whatever you had. I didn't really have anything else, but yeah, if you had a question. I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but by the way, this Potpourri section of the podcast, whatever we want, as long as it smells good. I guess we did kind of touch on it a bit, but did you want to expand a little bit more on the Fall Guy and the theatrical window and everything? We did touch on that, so we don't need to if you don't have any more to say.
I mean, like Inside Out 2 is going to be coming out here, soon, like in June. I believe Disney just like committed to a 120-day theatrical window.
Wow.
So I think that's what's really going to be the thing moving forward, is if these studios are going to be like going to start committing to that up front. Because that's obviously a sign of confidence from them in Inside Out 2. But are they going to be confident enough with every release to say that? Who knows?
Right.
But I think that'll be an interesting thing to say. Like, this is the theatrical window that it's going to have, because then what do parents say? Well, we're going to have to wait 4 months if we don't see it in theaters.
Right.
So, that's just, what I would say is it's a thing to look out for this summer. I think this summer could affect, like, those windows could affect kind of how things go moving forward. So, those will kind of be things to keep an eye out for.
That's really interesting. I hadn't heard that about the 120-day window. My suggestion would be that a couple months into Inside Out 2's run, if you want to do some A-list reservations over to Inside Out 2 to scan, help grease the wheels a little bit. That's interesting that they are committing to that. Is that just like their commitment to that release window for that particular movie, or is that like an across the board thing that they're?
I think it's just for Inside Out 2.
Okay.
Although they might come out and say a similar thing for Deadpool. I just think it's interesting. They know that their complacency is their enemy.
Yeah.
And that patience is their enemy. And people just saying, I'll see Inside Out 2 when it's streaming on Disney Plus in a couple weeks, or a few weeks, or even a month.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Especially when 3 of Pixar's best efforts in this decade came out exclusively on Disney Plus.
Yep.
With really no wait. I mean, there's no wait time. They just premiered there. So it's an effort not only for Disney to fight against the really, really quickly evaporating window, but also Pixar's value as a brand. So it's twofold.
Yeah. Yep. Well, hopefully, Disney is able to scrape together enough money to stay in business.
They're scrappy.
Yep.
Scrappy upstarts them.
Yep. Which, by the way, like, this can be my potpourri section because I don't really have anything, but we talked about The First Omen, and obviously I watched it. I have an immediate reaction on Patreon about it, but I did want to mention how funny it is today, like these days, that when Disney Plus premiered, it was like, I think it was before Disney bought 20th Century Fox and before that acquisition and everything. And it's just funny because, like, when Disney Plus launched, like, I remember this is episode 431 of the podcast. Disney Plus launched right around episode 300 of The Obsessive Viewer. And in that time, like, I remember, like, I did a whole, like, solo episode about Disney Plus and all the stuff that was on there. And it was like, oh, this is everything Disney. This is all Disney stuff. And it's just so funny that now years later, I load Disney Plus and it's like all the Hulu stuff is on there. I have a big banner image on Disney Plus of the first Omen. I'm like, it's just like, I understand how it's like putting together all of these different things, but it's just like the way that the world has changed, where it's like Disney Plus was where you would go, like the big pull of it at the beginning of Disney Plus in that market of
it was the Mandalorian
streaming
channel.
Yeah, it was the Mandalorian channel. It was the Star Wars channel, the MCU channel. It was the classic Disney stuff from our childhoods and from our parents' childhoods. Just all access available there. And then now it's like any other
like poor things.
Yeah,
poor things on
poor
Disney
things
Plus.
there. Yes, exactly. Perfect. Yep. So. So I don't know where the world's coming to, but what this episode of the podcast is coming to is the end. So, so thank you, Brent, for joining me on this episode, and putting up with my, stuff. Before we go, do you want to tell people where they can find you online and they can find your work and anything that's coming up in the near future?
Yeah, awakenthedark.com is my site. That'll give you access to exclusive content. Now, there's a banner with like my Facebook and Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and the other one that I'm forgetting. Yeah, check it out. I'll have a piece coming up for Midwest Film Journal next week.
Nice.
Other than that, pretty much written reviews, and should be a fun summer.
Nice. Should be a fun summer. We've got Podboy summer here, so it's going to be good times. So thank you again, Brent, and looking forward to having you on again soon, at some point. That's it for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer. As always, thank you so much for listening, and make sure to follow the show on social media and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app. Also, check out Obsessive Viewer Podcast's other shows, Tower Junkies, a Stephen King podcast hosted by Tiny and myself, and Anthology, the Twilight Zone and Classic Sci-Fi podcast hosted by me. Next week on the show, the current plan is to review The Watchers and Am I Okay, which is going to be on Max this week, I believe. So that's what's planned for next week. We'll see what comes. We'll see what happens. But that's coming next week. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you in next week's episode. And now, enjoy this short clip from a recent Patreon-exclusive episode. For the full episode and more Patreon-exclusive content, sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And this is something that I don't really do with a lot of other movies. I just, sometimes I do, but with Office Space in particular, last night I looked up Ron Livingston, and I looked up how old he is. And it's so interesting to me that at the time of this movie, when it was released, he was around 32 years old. And in the movie, he references he references to Michael Bolton that Michael has toiled most of his 20s, most of his mid-20s at Initech. And it's so interesting to me to think about that in the context of my own age now. I am 37, almost 38. And I just to see how a character who is in their late 20s or early 30s, seeing them have this existential crisis about their work-life balance, about their workplace, about the mundanity of corporate America life in the workplace, is just there's something kind of profound to me about that, I think. And it's something that I kind of honed in on, because again, the satire of American workplace culture, corporate America workplace culture is insane in this. The level to which this movie satirizes it so pitch perfectly is incredible. So thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. This episode was produced and edited by me, Matt Hurt. If you have feedback, thoughts on our episodes, or just want to connect, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. For more information on this show, including a full archive of our episodes and show notes, visit obsessiveviewer.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on social media and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. Also, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible to help increase our visibility and grow our community. If you want to support the show and get early access to new episodes, as well as a steady stream of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. For information on more podcasts presented by obsessiveviewer.com, visit obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. Our theme song is A Little Mad Sometimes by As Good As It Gets. For more of their music, check them out on Spotify and at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See this episode's show notes for our unique promo code to get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn when you sign up for a new account. Get your show on Apple and Spotify, get helpful stats and all the support you need to sound your very best.